Again, really want to thank the Chainlink and Teller community for joining us today. Really excited to have Ryan Berkun from the founder of Teller join us to tell us everything about what they're working on. If you have questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. We'll try our best to get to them. Any links that we talk about, make sure to drop them into the description afterwards. And we'll go ahead and get started. Ryan, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, guys. Excited to work with the Link Marines, talk about some unsecured loans.
Yeah. So Ryan, I'd love to just get a little bit about your background information and what Teller is and kind of how you got started.
Yeah, the high level pitch of Teller is that we are an open source credit risk protocol. We create money markets where users can earn interest on deposits and connect their credit history to borrow without collateral. And it was a pretty fun kind of winding journey that led us to this point and kind of seeing this new vision that we could actually bridge the gap between the current DeFi money markets and the traditional world of fintech. Early on, I was a self-taught software engineer. I went super deep down the crypto rabbit hole last bull run in 2016. And I was just infatuated by this idea of digital ownership that we have in the space and the concept that we can expand access to the financial world by kind of simply removing the middleman. So previously, our team had been kind of focused on building infrastructure in the space. We received grants from 0x, Tezos, a handful of other projects. But we've been following DeFi and had always been looking for that opportunity to bring new users into the crypto space. And I think we have it. The concept that Teller has is by simply lowering the barriers to entry into the crypto space, i.e. right now with DeFi, that's lowering the collateral ratios needed to actually access capital. We can onboard many new users into the crypto world because we can be perceived by them as just any other financial provider. The idea that you could simply take out a loan is very common. And as long as we can get them to a place where they feel comfortable taking an unsecured loan and the risks are managed proportionally as they are in the traditional world, we can unlock an insane amount of value for the DeFi space, not only new assets coming in, but new users that are able to actually leverage this technology. So that's really our focus here as we get to launch with Teller. Really excited to almost be that next on-ramp into the crypto space.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. So I know we were kind of talking offline about this a little bit, but you guys at Teller went through A16Z and have some other people that you're working with. What value did you gain from that? What did you learn, and do you recommend it? And kind of what was that experience like?
I would recommend it time after time again. It was an incredible experience to go through it. I think the biggest thing that you can get out of that crypto school is focus. There is a lot of signal to noise in the blockchain space. And especially we're seeing it in DeFi now with yield farming, sushi migrations, Uniswap being vampire attacked. There's just so much going on that teams really do need to understand, where should I put my focus on? What A16Z's crypto startup tool gave us was essentially a template to say, here's where value is captured in blockchain. And here's how it's almost no different from different startup waves that have happened in the past. If you look at the social media era, when it was Facebook, MySpace, and all the other competitors at that time, what won was the network effect. It was creating the most amazing platform that goes on the mathematics of how do you get that extra person to come into the network. And crypto has the same thing, but with tokens and with open source software for finance. So at A16Z, one of the presentations actually went through this concept of the flywheel in crypto. As you have more people in the project, the value of the project will increase. That actually translates to the holders of a token. They have more perceived value of it, and it's this massive network effect. That allowed us to take kind of some of these generalized concepts from the traditional world, apply them to blockchain, and say, hey, with this more clear focus, how do we actualize on our goal of bridging the gap between the traditional DeFi and the traditional world? So I think that focus from Andreessen was incredible and something like I would recommend to anyone. It was really a great learning experience and kind of a great vehicle to propel us to what we are now as Teller today.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Sounds really exciting, and congratulations going through that. So your background a little bit, were you always into cryptocurrency, or what kind of sparked this idea in general, and how did you really first start getting involved?
I had known about Bitcoin from a friend mining it way back like 2011, but I'd overlooked it, and I think we all have that same feeling of like, oh my god, I wish I got in then. But I had always been just kind of a self starter. I'd always been working on different projects. I love the idea that you could create something almost out of thin air, and that's what coding does for you. So I had just been more or less in the app game, building different applications that I thought could impact users in a positive way. And that kind of turned me into the world of AI, actually, seeing how we could utilize AI in ways that could advance society, and seeing how we could actually potentially bring that kind of cross industry. While I was getting pretty deep into AI, I started looking specifically into fintech and how we could utilize AI to enhance the capabilities of those accessing capital from the traditional world. So how you could use something like in AI, there's a concept called a neural network. It's how Google is able to like say a dog is a dog in an image. And I was thinking of ways that we could apply this to the traditional world, working on a couple different projects that we can enhance the ability to access capital. And I think crypto just kind of fell in my lap. This was 2016, the market was getting hot, and so many people just around me were talking about it. So I decided to kind of start digging deeper. And I think the first video that I watched that really clicked for Bitcoin was Andreas Antonopoulos on the Joe Rogan podcast. I'm not sure how many of you have seen that one, but I finally really it hit me, the concept that we have this money that no one owns and no one controls, but we all own our piece of it, and no one can take that away from you. So that ability to have personal financial freedom and ownership really struck me as like, oh my god, this world can actually change everything for the better. And as I went deeper into the rabbit hole, I realized that the smartest and most active and most energetic people are working on this type of technology. I love this concept that blockchain will be a horizontal shift. We will see it in every different vertical because every vertical relies on money. So just off the bat, blockchain technology will be embedded into everything that we see in the next 5 to 10 years. So that got me in, but I think I've stayed because the community, the enthusiasm, just everyone in this space is really amazing. And I think we do have a genuine big picture opportunity to change the world for in a much positive direction.
Awesome, love it. Yeah, no, I remember that podcast, or yeah, the video too, of watching that with Joe Rogan. I'd love to dive in. So, there's other lending platforms out there. What makes Teller unique, and what exactly is Teller for the audience that maybe have some sort of an idea, but what is it?
So opposed to the current lending platforms today, we do one specific thing that makes us unique, and that's credit assessments. A lot of the protocols today that have come out, starting with Maker, then followed by Compound, Aave, they focused on the idea that we can unlock access to capital by locking up a specific form of capital. And that's done breakthroughs for the space. We actually have billion-dollar AUMs in different protocol sets. And I think what they've captured is this idea that you can have a risk-free rate that is global, decentralized, and doesn't rely on any organization itself. So it really is amazing how far we've come in DeFi today. And Teller itself, we actually build on top of that. So our concept is these guys have unlocked the idea that there's a risk-free rate, an over-collateralized rate in crypto. Through our credit assessment, we actually take into account those rates. So we're built directly on top of these protocols. And we say, hey, if a borrower wants to take out capital, well, if they were putting in 150% collateral, what would be that risk-free rate? That's the basis for any interest rate that gets built on Teller or charged by Teller. The next is a risk premium. And we actually use our credit assessment to calculate this risk premium based on the data that the borrower wants to provide. So at launch, they'll be able to actually connect their bank account. And we support bank accounts in 7 different countries at launch. And we'll be able to actually run through a credit assessment saying, hey, based on this banking information, here's the interest rate you would be charged for this type of loan. So what becomes interesting is we see ourselves as an extension of the current DeFi ecosystem, almost being able to bridge that gap between DeFi today and then eventually, fully unsecured loan that you just see in the traditional ecosystem. And that's what really sets us apart from the different lending protocols.
Very exciting. Yeah. So you're actually taking someone's real world bank account and then being able to go and be able to just directly connect that to your platform and then be able to take a loan from that. Are you using someone's actual credit score, or is it just kind of what assets they have and then being able to determine that?
So currently we are using what assets they have and then being able to determine what a risk ratio would be for them. At launch, we will be starting with very simple parameters. So the first is a loan to balance. That's simply saying, what was your lowest balance in the past 60 days? How do we apply that as a ratio to the loan? And how do we plug that parameter in to assess risk? Over time, we'll be plugging in more parameters, upgrading the credit risk algorithms themselves. For example, plugging in future net cash flows or plugging in your actual income and how that relates to the debt itself. Over time, we do plan to expand to live credit scores on chain. I can't really talk about specifics yet, but we will be coming out with more information for the community over the next kind of timeline post launch.
Cool. Yeah, yeah, really excited for that launch, and I can see how this can really bring in more people and kind of bridge these two divides and bridging, real world assets on chain. So how do you balance the risk for unsecured loans, and what exactly is the collateralization ratio for each of these?
Yeah. So kind of running off your last point, the idea of bridging real world assets on chain. I mean, we credit in the real world is almost like an asset itself. It is a digital asset that's used as collateral. So that goes directly into how we balance risk. The credit assessment itself is the first world where we balance risk because we're pretty much saying that the interest rate should justify the lower collateral. That's the same thing that happens on any traditional lending platform today. So like Lending Club, SoFi, any of the major just fintech financial lending platforms. The second way that we balance risk is we actually limit at the onset the loan use cases. So at launch, we'll be able to whitelist specific DeFi protocols that the loan can be used in. And that enables us to safeguard the principal from actual risk of it, just the borrower just running away with capital. So an example of that would be you take out a loan to leverage trade on Uniswap, or maybe you want to do stablecoin arbitrage on Curve. These will all be whitelisted applications within the ability to use the loan within these whitelist applications. The third is we actually have partnered with a debt collector here in San Francisco. So we will have the opportunity that if you do take out a fully unsecured loan, you will have to sign off that saying, hey, I am willing to be contacted by a debt collector if I do default. So there's two different types of loans, and that's where the collateral ratios come into play. The first is a secured type of loan, and we see it almost like a slider. So you can go from anywhere from 150% collateral all the way down to our minimum collateral amount. I believe it's about 35%. And the borrower chooses. They say, hey, I'm willing to put up this much collateral. That information then gets fed into our credit risk assessment algorithm. And it says, hey, based on the collateral you want to put up, here's the interest rate you're charged, here's the max loan you can take out. For that type of loan, you can use any of the whitelisted DeFi applications that we'll have. So for example, you could put down 30% worth of collateral in Link, borrow 100% worth of that collateral in USDC, and you can actually then go use that USDC on Uniswap to buy maybe YFI. The other type of loan is a fully unsecured loan. So this actually enables the user to go all the way down to zero collateral. In order to do that, you do have to connect your bank account, and this is where the debt collector comes into play. So that information, that personal information, is never shared. It's never written on chain. It's simply passed over to the debt collector just in case there's a default. What's interesting is that the debt collector now has an opportunity to simply monitor the chain in a way that this has never happened in the traditional financial sense because the debt collector is simply trusting another lending and borrowing entity that signed off on this debt. With us, you can actually monitor, did this person repay this loan, because it all happens transparently on ETH. What's cool though, is you can actually have now as a consumer access to capital without putting anything up but who you are and connecting your bank. But it's fixed and it's limited. So the loan itself that you take out, that underlying asset has to be used in the whitelisted applications. So if I borrow DAI, I have to use DAI. If I borrow USDC, I have to use USDC. And that enables us on the lending side to reduce risk because the principal always stays the same. We don't have the risk of liquidation, of price fluctuations. But you as a borrower could borrow something like synthetics to go stake it. You could borrow USDC to go do stablecoin arbitrage on Curve. So there's still a plethora of opportunities here, and the just increase in capital efficiency we think is going to be extremely exciting for the DeFi space today.
Yeah, that's very exciting. So you can still be able to use it and compose it on different platforms, even though just keeping it into that one currency. So I got a lot of questions now. So wait, it makes a lot of sense. And so, like, what banks are you working with, and what are these real world plug-in traditional finance products that you're going to be using to start, and what countries, I guess, also are you going to be aiming for?
Okay, we'll go down the list of the questions. So we actually work with third-party API providers. There's already traditional fintech companies that do this today that connect to a handful of banks, and they simply provide you with a seamless interface to connect to those banks. So we don't interface directly with the banks themselves. We interface with third-party fintech companies. We already have those ready to go for launch, so it's going to be super exciting. You'll be able to connect your bank account from 7 different countries. It's US, UK, Netherlands, Ireland, and Spain, and I believe 2 others that are not coming to my mind. But it's amazing because we will be able to expand immediately outside of the US at launch. So users who are not in the States can still have access to unsecured loans. Those who maybe aren't falling into those countries, you'll still be able to have access to the secured type of loans. So you can go all the way down to something like 30%, 35% collateral and be able to take out a loan. So it's still a major increase in capital efficiency. What we kind of see as real world credit kind of comes into DeFi is that it won't be written on chain necessarily, because people don't want their personal data, especially their financial data, written on chain. What we think will happen is that the data will be used for computation purposes, and that's how we've structured the protocol. So with Teller, as you as a consumer, you'll be able to connect your bank account, and this is where data is pulled. So this is one part of the protocol. You connect your bank account, the data is pulled through our kind of third-party API connections and then signed off by Teller Labs. We're the first on-chain kind of data provider, but of course anyone could be a data provider over time. That data is signed off, tested off-chain, is given to the consumer. That consumer then has this data and they want to actually say, hey, can I get my loan terms so I can take out money on chain? They will submit that. For us, we have a kind of like a layer 2, it's called this distributed cloud, and all it does is run computation. So it'll submit, the consumer will submit their information to these distributed cloud nodes. They'll all run one of these open source credit risk algorithms and spit out the loan terms, give them back to the user. Those loan terms will say, hey, based on your information, we can do this in collateral. Maybe we can go all the way down to unsecured. We can do this with the interest rate you charge, and maybe here's the max size of a loan you can take out. Now, all that happened off chain, so the consumer's data was never written on chain. The algorithm can actually handle massive amounts of data because it just runs like any Web 2 application in fintech would run. And now the consumer can simply submit that on chain to our consensus contracts, and the money can be taken out. What's cool is we're actually utilizing Chainlink in a unique way. So when the data is submitted to the credit risk algorithm, all the price feeds are coming from the on-chain oracles. So we know that there's actually a distributed network that's vetting the prices of the tokens before it gets sent to the calculation. So I believe we are the first protocol at large utilizing Chainlink in this way to derive credit assessment from the price feeds.
Yeah, very exciting. It makes a lot of sense now. And so, kind of going off your last point, so that's kind of how nothing's on chain specifically. That's your private information. So how do you avoid data falsification? And is that up to the fintech companies that you're working with to kind of be able to solve that issue?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's an even more pertinent question for DeFi, as we just see everyone trying to break systems as much as they can. We are right now at launch relying on our third-party providers. The good thing is these are companies that work with every major financial institution. So they have massive security departments that attempt to mitigate fraud, attempt to make sure that data is valid and it's not falsified, and mitigate any type of data identity breaches that might happen. So we do rely heavily on the third-party data providers we're working with, but they are very large institutions who've been around for many years. So we're very confident in that. What we do though, is once the data is retrieved to Teller Labs, we sign off on that also. So you kind of have 2 security measures to make sure that the data itself is legitimate. And in in kind of lieu of what we'll do post-launch, a lot of our focus will be on enhancing security, using new types of attestation models, something similar to kind of what Chainlink has been working with Deco, the recent acquisition of Deco itself. So something in that world where privacy is maintained, but we can even further kind of enhance the security and minimize data falsification.
Yeah, I can really see that being a good use case with each other on that. Is there anything else like with Chainlink that you're working with us on that you want to talk about? And I guess also what feeds will you be using on Chainlink and be allowing people to use for collateralization?
Oh yeah, so I think what's exciting about us is we use these feeds not only for the main loan, but also for the assets that you purchase with the loan. So the initial collateral types that we'll be releasing, we haven't fully announced yet, I believe, but we will be announcing, and all of those will be backed by the Chainlink price feeds. The way that we work for liquidation is similar to Compound. So we have a reward, pretty much a 5% reward for the liquidators, and it makes a pretty seamless process for them to come and liquidate because they know there's a guaranteed price reward from that. That enables us to mitigate some of the risk that we saw with Maker from the kind of the flash crash that we saw earlier in the year. And it's pretty exciting because we feel super confident being backed by Chainlink and those price fees being there in case we do need to liquidate. That's from the general loan pool itself. Once you actually have the loan, so for example, I borrowed USDC and I want to go buy an asset on Uniswap, we are actually using the Chainlink feeds as our way to vet the tokens that are able to be purchased. So any of the feeds that are supported right now for other ERC20 assets are what we're utilizing for the assets that you can purchase through like a whitelisted app like Uniswap. Then if there is a liquidation that's needed based on the assets that you've purchased, we have secure price feeds to do so. So it's unique in that it's not just the lending pool itself, it's also the collateral or the assets that you purchase that we're using the price feeds for.
Cool. For the audience, any timeline when this is going to be out and people are going to be able to use it?
Yes, so we are looking at early Q4. So coming soon, guys. We don't have an exact date, but we will be dropping one. We will be coming out with one. We'll also be announcing a lot of the details of it. The collateral types will be supported at the start, the assets supported, and the assets that you can purchase with the loan.
Exciting. What are the biggest challenges that you see when you're tackling this problem and trying to get this to production and ready to launch?
I think so because we are not simply a on-chain Solidity contract kind of module set or project. It is difficult in terms that we do have to handle a world of compliance that I think those who simply built open source smart contract software, they get to mitigate in some sense because they don't necessarily know who the users are. And once open source software is released, it can just be released to the world. So we've actually very strategically built the protocol in compliance with the laws here in the States. And that's why we actually have three different kind of worlds or ecosystems. One is the data provider, which gives the consumer their data, and that's it. So we are actually able to separate the world of consumers getting the data and what the consumer does with the data. The second is a world of computation where the user submits their data to this off-chain kind of node network. And we're able to state that these nodes are not actually implying risk themselves. They're not creating these credit risk algorithms. So they're not the ones stating themselves that these are the interest rates. They're simply running a application. They're running a programmatic credit risk algorithm. But what's cool is that these credit risk algorithms can be developed by anyone around the world. And if the community approves it and votes on it, the new credit risk algorithms can be updated. And that's open source, that's decentralized, and it's governed by the community. The third world is, of course, where the money moves, and that's on chain. So just like other protocols, we never touch the funds themselves. And I think that's been the most interesting kind of hurdle to get over has been how do we withstand a world that is supposed to be open source, decentralized, and made for everyone, and pair that with kind of walking these worlds of A, compliance, but B, making something secure for our third-party providers that we're partnered with.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. We got time for a few more questions. You said that at the beginning that you were building a lot of apps, come from a software engineering background. Now you're building cryptocurrency and these digital products. Do you have any advice for engineers that are looking to maybe like break out and start their own company and project and kind of go out on their own?
Yeah, it's never been an easier time to start a project. I think the ideas that we're seeing brewing in the crypto space surrounding fair launches, community ownership of protocols, really drive forth this idea that you could be a sole engineer like Andre and turn something into, I mean, seemingly what had become and still is $1 billion protocol in the course of a couple months. I think it's really amazing to see the excitement in the space right now. If you are an engineer who wants to start a project, crypto is the space to do it. There's no other world where you need less collateral, less of a team base, and just like less of a marketing need than right now. It really is an exciting time. And I think the resources available with fair launches, the idea that the community can be involved and the community can and will step up, shows that any idea that is a potentially good idea or idea that the community would like to be a part of can be launched. So what's cool right now is it's not an if, but a when for any type of idea that is valuable in the crypto space. And really isn't a better time to launch a protocol. If you are looking to launch something, please talk to us, as there are potential opportunities that we will have coming up in the future that we don't have for announcement yet, but there will be opportunities that we'll be supporting. And we just love this idea of fair launches and however we can be behind that and help in any way possible.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great advice. We have a hackathon going on right now, so I know there's a lot of engineers also listening, and I'm sure that resonates with a lot of people.
Oh yeah, soon we'll be saying build on Teller.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I can't wait to see the programs and get this launched and be able to use your product. So is there anything else that we maybe didn't cover that you want to mention?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about kind of some of the roadmap we'll have going forward. So after we launch, a lot of kind of our focus will be looking at the community and looking for upgrades to some of this credit assessment, looking for upgrades to the protocol itself. And we'd love if anyone in the community has experience in the traditional financial world, at being a data engineer, being a financial analyst, please join our community, reach out. There's a lot of opportunities that we're going to have in advancing forward a lot of the credit assessment that we'll be doing kind of off chain and on chain.
Cool. If people want to follow your progress and join this community, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, so go to our website, teller.finance, follow us on Twitter. It's @useteller is our handle. And from there, join our Discord. Please, we are as active as we can be in Discord. We love contributions from the community. So any way that we can bounce ideas off each other, we'd love to have you join.
Awesome. Yeah. I'll make sure to share that. I know that you're in the middle of this huge launch. What else do you do on your fun time? I know you're in San Francisco. Is there anything else that you're reading right now or doing for fun and kind of excited about?
Yeah, I've been reading up on Ben Horowitz's books. I find them incredibly valuable for understanding what it genuinely is like running companies and startups at different stages. He has one recent one on culture, and I think it's fantastic. He pulls a lot of corollaries from just many different epochs of time, everything from Genghis Khan to like cult leaders in like jails and how those communities are grown and come about. And I think it's really showing that we have these communities that are developing in crypto. There's a lot of correlations you can make. So that's kind of what I've been reading. On fun time is, San Francisco actually has beautiful nature. So while COVID has limited what we can do in terms of going to restaurants and going to places, I've just been biking, man. This city has a lot to explore. I would recommend anyone to come check it out if you get a chance.
Sweet, man. Well, I'm really excited for you guys' launch. Thank you a lot for joining this AMA. This was a lot of fun. Is there anything else that you want to say?
That pretty much covers it. If there's questions from the audience, I'd love to hop on and see what I could talk about.
Yeah. Not sure. Everyone that has questions, we'll just drop the Discord link into the chat and make sure to join Teller's Discord, and then they'll be able to answer them there. Otherwise, again, Ryan, really grateful for you to be on. This was a lot of fun. Really want to thank the big and growing Teller community and the Chainlink community for joining us here today. And all the team members, Ben and Ivan on the Teller side and Rory on Chainlink that helped put this all together. We're doing a lot more of these. There's also a lot of engineering workshops happening throughout this week and next week for the Chainlink Hackathon. And it's not too late to join. So if you're looking, as Ryan saying, now's the best time to build something, it's not too late. A lot of great prizes to help you kind of like get on your feet and launch all those. And so you can find those on the Chainlink YouTube. Again, thank you a lot, and look forward to seeing your progress.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Link Marines, and thank you, Keenan and Rory. Appreciate having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Cool. Thanks, Ryan.